Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Blue Maxima, and I know I don't usually start in the system menu or the desktop or what have you, but this is a special occasion, so I just need to point out for a second that I am currently online. I can access the PlayStation Store, I can access the Explore tab, and I can go over to, let's go to my settings and go to my network, and we can see that my internet connection is on and I am signed in, right? Now let's try and play Dirt 5. I'm gonna be just hammering the X button so that it skips as many of the intertitles as possible, but there's some that you just can't skip. Alright, so there we go. We're booting up Dirt 5, and crash. It took me a while to figure out why this was happening, but if you have been paying attention for the past 30 seconds, you will know exactly what the problem is. I do not know why on earth this changes anything, but if I disconnect from the internet and try and play Dirt 5 again, whoops. So let's just come over here. You're offline, you're offline. Now let's start up Dirt 5 again. Just hammering the X button to get through all the intertitles again. And here we are. We press X to start, and the game actually makes it to the main menu. Why does this happen? I have no idea. This is legitimately bizarre. There's also another crashing problem, but trust me, we will run into it eventually in about, let's say 30 minutes. So let's just go have a quick look around. You can change how your player card here looks, but most of this stuff you can't actually get until you level up either your rep or your level, which is annoying because some of these stickers are actually kind of cool and I would have them, but yeah, look at these levels that you have to get. It's kind of ridiculous how far they expect you to level up. Not to mention you've got different reputations with different career path things, and those also take a while to level up, and they take ages. You've got plenty of settings to work with, including the ability to turn off the adaptive triggers. I recommend you do this, and we'll get onto why shortly, and there's all your controls. There's nothing too out of the ordinary here. This is an arcade style racer, so there's not that much you need to worry about, but there are some options to turn on here. Intermediate is the difficult, medium is the default difficulty. So I'm just going to leave these as they are, and that's the majority of how I've been playing this, right? Heads-up display options. The heads-up display opacity is usually at maximum, but I turned it down to about half because I wanted to see more of the map, but trust me, this just looks weird when you see it. Also, video options, prioritize image quality or resolution, and it does it like automatically, and it looks kind of weird when it does. But I've been prioritizing resolution this whole time, and admittedly the game looks smooth as butter, but it doesn't run smooth as butter. I've also got the master volume turned down here. Usually it's all the way up, but it's quite loud when you do that, so I've been keeping it about down here. Nothing particularly wrong with those settings for the most part. So arcade is just pick a map, pick a set of cars, weather, and AI, and go for it, and time trial is exactly what you expect. I've got nothing to do to deal with there. Playgrounds are a little different. I'd love to play some of the published ones, but I can't, because if I turn the online on again, it'll crash. Yeah, I don't know why either. But this is basically just a place where you can come and create your own courses. As to the extent of that, I don't know. I haven't touched it because I can't get online. You can also come here to the garage and see all the cars that you have and what all the cars are that you can get. Annoyingly, the game tempts you by putting all these buy this on the PlayStation Store cars here, and they're usually way better than the stuff you have to start with. There are some cars that seem to be better than ones you can buy from the PlayStation Store, but man, it just does not sit right with me. So let's move on to the career. The career is really simple to understand. You start at the left, you work your way to the right. Every time you finish an event, you unlock the event on the right. So you can get 1 medal for finishing the event, 2 for coming second, and 3 for coming first, which is a nice touch because it means that if you've got an event that you are really pissed off with, you can just finish it and never have to come back to it again unless you're going for all the trophies. However, there is a certain amount of medals that you need to get in order to pass specific points in the campaign, but as you can see, despite the fact that I only just unlocked Chapter 3, I've already got all the medals I need to beat Chapter 3, and there are 5 chapters overall. 375 events divided by 3, that's 125. That's a fair amount of events, I suppose. Nothing too out of the ordinary with that. So without further ado, let's just pick an event and go for it. You've got all the cars you can get here, including their performance and their handling. Although I don't know how much of a difference this really truly makes, because I've been driving a bunch of different cars. And if I'm being honest, there's like 80% of them that feel no different from each other. They're just roughly the same, just they accelerate a bit faster or handle a slight bit better. But there's no real down and dirty customization to be done a la a Gran Turismo game. Although this is meant to be an arcadey style racing game. So, you know, that's just kind of a thing. So you can pick different patterns or just a basic pattern. Although they aren't really that different from each other. You can change whether or not you want certain layers to be enabled or filled with a single color or a texture. And of course, you need to buy textures with money. You can also add decals, but you can't really do much to them once they're there. So you can buy the decal, you can scale it, you can rotate it, but you can only get a few at a time, and they're very specific. This is nothing like the livery editor from a Forza Motorsport game, for example. You can't do anything much with that. And your sponsors are people you deal with in the campaign. And there are a lot of different sponsors here. And you can have them put pretty much anywhere on the car. But I find it really hard to care because it's such a lightweight customization system that I don't really waste time with it. I just pick the default car and go just because, well, none of them really look any particularly great. There's not really that much you can do with it. So I'm curious as to why it's here in the first place. I'm not going to catch up, am I? Please ignore the fact that I just restarted the race. So as I was saying, this game looks good. It really does. In a fair few different ways. The skyboxes are gorgeous. These lighting effects are something else entirely. And when you're in first-person view like this, and you can see all of the individual raindrops there on the windscreen, the game looks even better than it has any right to be. But there are times where the game just kind of falls apart when it comes to the graphical styling of everything. Mainly how the fact that your car can be the dirtiest piece of shit on the road. You can have all sorts of cracks and dents and bullshit going on. And it'll look absolutely terrible, like it's just been through a freaking blender. And then you'll be on the podium with a bunch of other dudes in the same race as you, who look like they've barely worked up a sweat. There's next to no dirt, dust, or mud on them. Their parts aren't cracked. It's just a bit iffy in that sense. And this does apparently extend to some of the technical details as well. Like how you'll leave dirt tracks behind and what have you. But they'll only last for a few seconds, so when you come back around, the area looks completely untouched. And it's just a bit weird. There are also some stylistic choices that I'm not particularly a fan of. One being the night mode. So you can see that we've gone from, like, the afternoon to night over the course of a single 2-minute lap. Or, well, not really a 2-minute lap, but like 2 minutes. And as a result, everything has kind of become really hard to see. And there are some tracks that are a real pain in the neck when it comes to this. Because you just can't see a damn thing in front of you. Like, if you enjoy playing in this screen here, in this view, in the cockpit, there are some things you just will not be able to see until you're right on top of them. It's so dark. And this can happen right in the middle of a race. So if you're in the middle of a course that you are legitimately having trouble with, and you can't see shit, it's not going to help your performance, is it? Which means that this mode out here, which has the most visibility for the headlights, somehow, I'm not entirely sure why it's so hard to see things when you're in the cockpit view, but here the headlights light up parts of the course clear as day. It just makes it kind of hard to drive around in. Now, you might have noticed on the left side of the screen there that I've got racing goals. And these racing goals aren't actually determined per event. They're proc-gen, randomly generated. Whatever the hell you want to call it, they're just picked from a random pile. And they're completely random, to the point where some of them don't even make any sense. Like, for example, when I restarted this race, I was in 3rd place and I got to 1st. If I was playing anything anywhere near optimally, I would never get that goal done. Because I would get into 1st place and I would stay there the entire freaking time. But in this game, it's like, oh, do 5 overtakes despite the fact you're starting in 3rd place and you want to be in 1st place as much as possible. Keep X speed for 2 seconds in a car that can get there in like 1.5 seconds. Drift once. Just some really unusual shit, right? And I don't understand why. There wasn't even a car there. What the heck? Look, there's no car. Where did the 2nd place go? I've not seen that bug happen, but it happened. Okay. So there's your rewards at the end of each race. You get XP for your levels, rep for your sponsor, you get money, and sometimes you get unlocks. And then you unlock the next set of events. You've also got throwdowns, which are head-to-head races that unlock your unique customization. And here are your sponsors. So your sponsors are at different ranks. They give you different pay depending on how much you complete their objectives. And you can choose whichever one you like. There's a lot of them. And they all have their own unique events. However, you can actually re-roll your objectives for both your career and for the individual event for a bit of money. To make them a little less bullshit, but at the same time, you're not going to know what you're capable of in that event until you actually go and play the event. So it doesn't really matter. Oh look, it's a race with the exact same car. Let's do something, let's try Ultracross. And let's see if we can afford a better car for this. Alright, we'll go with another Aston Martin, I suppose. There are 10 different kinds of events, and they determine the basic details of what's going on. Most of them are relatively similar, except one will be lap-based, one will be just progression-based, so you get from one end to the other. There'll be ones where you're driving around on nothing but ice. Those ones are fun, we'll get to why later. There are ones where you're driving around sprint cars around a single oval style. You know, just think like Daytona, but really small, right? It's all pretty basic stuff, though. Nothing particularly out of the ordinary for an arcadey racing game that's still trying to hold on to some semblance of realism, right? Nothing particularly wrong with that in the long run. However, the downside is most of the races end up feeling the same. Because it doesn't matter whether you've got snow on the track, rain on the track, mud on the track, or just straight old-fashioned asphalt or dirt. A lot of the cars feel almost identical to drive. They brake in the same way, they accelerate in the same way, they feel the same on the road. They feel almost glued to the road, unless you tap a rock, in which case you go absolutely flying for no discernible reason. About half the time. The physics just aren't consistent, at least in my experience with the game in the past couple of hours of playing it. This only changes when you get to cars that are driving around on the ice. or the sprint cars. In particular, these absolutely tiny ones that get to 80 miles an hour and only have one gear. They are absolute bastards to drive for no discernible reason, and I'm convinced that the AI doesn't actually follow the physics rules of Dirt 5 as much as you do. Because they're able to take the ice corners and just the big-ass drifts, and they treat those sorts of courses like they're just regular ones where you're on regular dirt. They don't seem to have any spin-outs, they don't seem to have any kind of drift on their car whatsoever. They just seem to treat ice like it's dirt, or they treat these supercars that have massive amounts of acceleration and massive amounts of skid like they're just regular old cars. And it makes driving them around absolutely infuriating, because even when you've got all the assists turned all the way up, which I tried for one race, they still handle like absolute dog's bollocks. And then the other cars just carry on like it doesn't matter. Compare that to this race here, for example, where for some reason, if you get into first, you can more or less stay there. But if you're all the way back in 12th, you will never be able to catch up, no matter how well you're doing on the exact same race. I can't make any sense of the AI difficulty in this one. It seems horribly inconsistent, or rather, it is consistent. What isn't consistent is the drivability of the cars that you're expected to drive around. See, like, look at this view. You can barely see anything that's coming if it wasn't for those arrows. So if there's like a random rock on the course, you're not going to be able to see the damn thing. Also, yeah, jump plus trade paint on this course, where there's only one real area that you can get any decent airtime, which means that you'd have to actively be slowing down and staying with the pack and getting the jumps in and slamming into people to get that, and then accelerating to the front of the pack in order to get the stay in first place for 60 seconds one on a course where a lap barely takes like 2 minutes. It's just random. It doesn't make any sense to me. Why not have like predetermined goals for each event? It's obvious that the events aren't prop gen. There's a very specific layout to them, so I don't understand why the events are just picked out of a hat. The goals are picked out of a hat and not the events. You could very easily make a prop gen event setup. I don't understand what the deal is. Still does look nice though. There's also a really annoying goal, which is finish a race in reverse. So not only do you have to be far enough ahead to be able to realistically turn into a wall, you'd have to be able to get your reverse going and back up as well. So you need to be at least 3 seconds ahead. Like, see, look at my car in comparison to theirs. They all feel like they're trying to follow a racing line out of freaking Forza Motorsport. The AI doesn't give you the feeling of that arcadey driving experience that this game seems to want to give out. And I couldn't tell you why. It's just weird. Let me show you some Icebreaker. I don't think it really matters which car I pick at this point, so I guess I'll just buy one. We are currently 20 minutes into the recording, just FYI. The reason why I bring this up is because of the crashes. So not only does this game crash on startup if you don't have the internet enabled, although I've heard that this is a problem more spread across the PlayStation 5, but it's mostly been affecting my experiences in this game, right? So not only does this game like crash on the PlayStation 5 if the internet is turned on, it is 100% guaranteed to crash in approximately 30 to 40 minutes. For me, it's always been around the 30-minute mark, but the second time it happened around the 35-minute mark. I wasn't paying very close attention, but that was about how long it would take, right? Career objective complete. Perform 20 drifts. Great. So yeah, considering that I'm incapable of playing this game for half an hour, it's just kind of hard to really appreciate it, you know? Another thing that's kind of annoying about the way the game handles the model, that I mentioned earlier, is the adaptive triggers. Because if you want to hold down just like the trigger like halfway, so you only want to put a little bit of pressure on the accelerator, right? You are going to run into some real problems. Because the adaptive triggers kick in a lot, and how they kick in does not seem to be related to how the accelerator and the brake are actually performing. So, you're driving along, you're trying to hold it just like halfway, so that you can get a little bit of speed going, but not so much as to skid out, right? But the adaptive trigger is going off under you and flickering it like on and off, like someone's fiddling with a light switch. Despite the fact that you can't see any particular reason as to why on the screen, as the car should be doing that. No, nothing particularly like getting in the way of the... Like, look, I don't know much about cars. Right? I'm a gamer. I play games. That's what I do. So when I'm driving this kind of car, I'm looking on screen, and I don't know if it's meant to be like the terrain under my wheels, or if it's meant to be some kind of internal mechanics that the game is simulating with the adaptive triggers. What I'm saying is, what's happening on screen doesn't connect with what's happening in the controller's adaptive triggers. It just doesn't feel right.
You are definitely not making any friends out there. Keep the aggression, because that'll help you get the wins, but just make sure you don't push things too far.
AJ has said that like 6 times, and it has absolutely no relevance to what I'm doing in the game. Money and libraries, very good. Let's do sprint. Oh, fuck me, it's this thing. This is the car I was talking about that picks up a massive amount of speed and just refuses to, be handled anything near reasonably. Also, I don't know why, but they're really liking the snow this time in this part of the game. So yeah, off we go. And around the corner we go. And I cannot for the life of me figure out how to control this fucking car. It just skids. No matter what I do. I hold the brake, I hold the accelerate, it just skids. It's all over the fucking place. I can't get it to control even remotely decently without losing a ton of speed. And it's just an absolute pain in the ass to drive. I can't for the life of me figure it out. It just goes all over the place. It's uncontrollable. And they're getting so far ahead of me. I have restarted an event similar to this several times, and for the life of me, I cannot figure out what the fuck you're meant to do with this thing. It's just... it's uncontrollable. Like, see, if I keep the accelerator up to keep up with the pack, I just skid out. But if I don't, I fall behind. I can't figure out what the deal is, and it's why I've come up with the theory that the AI doesn't pay as much attention to the physics as I do. Because it just seems to know the absolute perfect way to control this car, and I can't for the life of me figure out what it is. Compare that to the last couple events that I've run where I was able to get in front and stay there because the AI just can't catch up to me most of the time. Except for on Icebreaker, of course. So yeah, I absolutely hate this car. I can't control it. I can't figure out how to make that car work for me. It doesn't make any sense to me. Alright, let's go to China, I suppose. Can I buy a car that's actually got some speed on it? Nope. No cash. Oh, screw it. I'll buy a BMW. Whatever. So at least on the default difficulty, I haven't wanted to turn it up because I'm not one to try and take my racing games very seriously. Right? I enjoy winning. But considering the amount of games that are usually like, if you make one mistake towards the very end, everyone's going to speed up and catch up to you and you're going to lose. I try not to take them too seriously. But this game just has a lot of inconsistencies. When it comes to how difficult the AI is, when it comes to the physics, when it comes to, hell, the technical performance with the frame rate not being a solid 60, at least on not prioritized resolution mode. For no discernible reason, I might add. The game seems to run fine most of the time. It's just random areas that it just seems to drop in. The fact that the game won't stop crashing on me. And one other thing that hasn't actually come up yet. You've heard AJ, but you haven't heard the two podcast hosts they've got going on. And they are incredibly cringy. They have some terrible jokes, annoying voices, and are just generally twats. That's the best word I have to explain these two. They are twats. And I hate hearing them every single time they come up. Which is a pity, because at the very beginning of the game, every time you go into a new event, you have to hear their voices explain what the event is. Although it usually doesn't matter, because the event is usually just another form of racing. Another form of racing, but it's ice. Another form of racing, but you're driving these absolutely terrible fucking cars that are no fun to drive whatsoever because they're so fucking twitchy. And as a result, I just find myself not being particularly enamored with it. I don't really like the driving that much. The AI isn't as challenging as it should be, but at the same time it's so inconsistent, it's hard to know exactly how challenging it really is. Things like the adaptive triggers just don't seem to have been thought out in any reasonable way, and just turn them off isn't an excuse when they just aren't right. It's like, think playing a platformer and jumping causes the adaptive triggers to jiggle on and off a bit. I'm talking like, say, Sackboy. It's like that kind of, it doesn't really make any sense. Why did they do it this way? Fucking signs. That looks like you should be able to go right through it. And there are some things in this game that you can go right through, but that sign is apparently not one of them. There is also a mode you can play called Gymkhana, and it makes it sound really exciting, like you're going to be able to do stunts and whatnot. But really, with the way the jumps are handled in this game, and drifting is just a bit iffy, the game takes a really long time to decide whether or not what you're doing is actually a drift or not in the main races. So when you're actually, like, dropped into Gymkhana, and it's like, oh, you need to do, like, the only reason I'm falling behind here is because I keep running into shit. They keep pushing me into it half the time. But see, now that I'm in the middle of the pack, they're incredibly fast, for no discernible reason. It doesn't seem to make any sense to me. But yeah, when you're playing Gymkhana, it's so weird because the game's like, hey, that's my phone going off. That was some fucking timing. Oh man. Okay, but no. As I was saying, in Gymkhana, you're able to drift on a moment's notice. So when you're playing this game and it's like, oh, this didn't count as a drift, but this tiny little thing you did in the Gymkhana mode did, it just doesn't make any sense. And then I've got the game crashing on me every half hour, which is even worse. So as a result, I just don't really like Dirt 5. And I'm really disappointed in that, because I bought this due to the fact that the developer is actually one of my, well, it's not one of my favorite developers, but I fucking loved Drive Club. I thought Drive Club was brilliant. I loved the way that game handled. I loved the way it handled its events. I loved the way it had those little in the middle of the course challenges that you needed to do, and you could compete with all your friends along the side. So, this isn't developed by Evolution Studios specifically, but this is developed by a studio... Crash? Wow. Okay, I literally thought it was going to crash there. I'm willing to bet it's going to happen on the next one, so let's just pick... yeah, this one, why not? Drive around this gigantic thing on 4 wheels. But yeah, as I was saying, this wasn't done by Evolution, but this was done by the studio that Codemasters formed out of the grave of Evolution Studios. They're the same people that did Onrush. Onrush was also fantastic. They did a lot of creative things with it. So they got handed the reins to Dirt. And I thought to myself, I want to see the unique twists they would bring to a series like Dirt. Oh yeah, this is Pathfinder, by the way. The physics on this are just kind of atrocious because every single little bump is likely to send your car flying 90 degrees for no discernible reason. And it can get really frustrating to deal with. Like, see, look at this. Look at these physics. These physics do not feel right. It's this weird combination of heavy and floaty that just doesn't sit right. They don't gel. As a result, I'm just annoyed by it more than I am engaged by it. Not to mention it's next to impossible to play in this view. It's just really hard to see all the individual little rocks and bumps and shit that you're gonna have trouble seeing on your way through. So you might as well just play in this mode all the time, which is a shame, because the best way to play Drive Club was in the cockpit view. They haven't done anything unique here. They haven't done anything that's interesting. They haven't even got a decent handling model or a decent physics model. It just handles like dog's bollocks half the time. And I'm immensely disappointed by it because I was hoping that they'd do better. But they didn't. I loved Drive Club. I loved its difficulty. I loved the handling model. I loved Onrush. I loved its unique take on car combat. I loved the way that game handles its courses. This just doesn't work for me. This isn't doing anything that I particularly enjoy. It just feels like a bunch of random stuff slapped together. Nothing really works with each other. It's just meant to be a grind. Of course, I can't talk about online, but you know what online racing games are like. Nothing but sweaty people, and once you fall behind, you're never going to catch up again, and I don't like playing like that. At least with AI, they give you a chance. Also, I'm really surprised the game hasn't crashed yet, because it's crashed every other time I've gotten this far. What should I play? Well, you've seen everything except Gymkhana, so... Excuse me, I might as well play the latest Gymkhana that I've got. Oh, wait. Oh, there's a Gymkhana right there, god damn it. If I had picked any other event to play... Oh, if I had picked one of those two, I would have been able to go straight to a Gymkhana event, but it doesn't really matter, because Gymkhana in Mesa Valley is the same map, so I might as well just go and play this one. There is an option in the options menu to turn up the ability to make the car drift easier. But it actually makes it a little bit harder to handle as a result. So yeah, these things are loops, or no, donuts, I should say, donuts, where you have to stay in the thing to maintain the points. You've also got drift gates and, yeah, drift gates like this one, so if I can, no, can't hold the drift. There we go. Through the narrow gate, and now my points are multiplied, so unfortunately I only have 45 seconds left. So I need to try and make the most of it, but I'm not good at this. I am really not good at this. I will happily admit that I am not good at this. But I'm not enjoying trying to get better at it either. which makes all the difference, I think. And considering that I've been playing the first 2 chapters and none of this has really changed, I have no reason to believe that it's going to get any harder or any more enjoyable. It's just going to get weirder. I'm also... There it is! I've been waiting for that. I knew it was going to fucking crash. Thankfully, this game's pretty good on the auto-saving, so I haven't actually lost any progress or anything along those lines, but yeah. That's Dirt 5. And as you can see, I've been playing it off the disc. So unless the disc is faulty in some way, and I'm hoping it's not, don't buy it. I'm not really that impressed. It's not an absolutely terrible game, but I have played so many driving games that are better. Playing this makes me want to go and download that copy of Drive Club that I have. And I can't actually go and get it right now because my network isn't turned on. But it actually makes me want to go and turn on... it makes me want to go and get Drive Club and Drive Club VR. Because Drive Club VR was the same game, but in VR. And I don't know why Sony didn't put like a secondary developer on to maintain those games. Because they were amazing. They have no right to throw away that series like they did. But I guess they're too focused on their Gran Turismo these days. But now that I've got a PlayStation 5, at least I'll be able to play the new Gran Turismo. And hopefully it won't turn out to be a single-player nightmare like Gran Turismo Sport was, at least when it launched. Anyway, that's it from me. This has been Blue Maxima, and I will see you all next time.